even though I'm not a Syrian Arab American, I'm Lebanese-born Armenian American, but my heart goes out to all the Syrian people, regardless of what side they're fighting on. And I'm dismayed as an American. I am disillusioned, disappointed deeply in the fact that Washington has been hijacked by a new kind of pirates of the Caribbean running oil policy in the Middle East, trying to unseat a current regime. Even though I may not agree with that regime, I am for democracy, but I'm not for democracy at all costs. In the absence of ideal democracy, I am not for the invasion of foreign-backed and foreign-financed rebels and Al-Qaeda terrorists in Syria, destroying the infrastructure of Syria. So I am happy to be witness to the emergence of a third voice in the Syrian conflict, presenting the voice of the silent majority, the Syrian silent majority, speaking the conscience of Syrian national values. So Mother Agnes-Mariam has become that third voice, presenting the silent majority of Syria. So her groundbreaking social work is a very promising trend and is becoming, as we know it, a movement in Syria. And hopefully her wisdom and her courage will ultimately lead to that reality, to that beautiful reality. She has earned respect from all sides for her value system, and we're eager to hear from her and continue our solidarity with the Syrian people to reinvest in Syria, both in terms of moral and in terms of human power, so that the sovereignty, the Syrian sovereignty, is reestablished.
I also would like to present another great supporter of the Syrian cause. Also was there with us from day one, Mr. Bedros. I've been on his show a couple of times myself when we had a couple of rallies against the Turkish consulate for supporting the Mujahideen and allowing all the terrorists to come into Syria. Please, Mr. Bedros, if you can give us just one word. Thank you.
I would like to take the opportunity to thank the Syrian people, first of all, for taking us, the Armenians, while the genocide was taking place. It was the great Syrian people that took us in, gave us homes, allowed our churches, and allowed our language to continue. It was that very country and the people of that country that took us in and gave us everything we needed from day one. And when I first heard 2.5 years ago the tragedy that started in Syria, it reminded me the same tragedy that started back in 1890s against the Armenians with the Ottomans and the Pan-Turkish movement to eliminate the Armenians. And today the same powers are taking place to destroy the noble people of Syria, friendly people of Syria, the civilians of Syria, killing them, destroying them, because they don't want to be subjected to the same powers that eliminated us. But we do exist. We did exist, and we will exist. We will continue existing due to people like Mother Agnes-Mariam, activists for justice. We will continue, and our hearts are with the Syrian people all the way to the end. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank some of our distinguished guests, Mr. Blaise Compain, who has been a lifetime around the world. He has been supporting the progressive movements and around the world, mainly in Central and Latin America. Thank you very much for being here. And his wife. My name is Johnny Ashi. I'm with Arab Americans for Syria. Some of you know me, some don't. I am what we consider a Syrian loyalist. First thing that comes to people's mind when I say Syrian loyalists, they go, oh, you're with Bashar al-Assad. I want to explain this, very important. If you should know one fact about what's going on in Syria, you should know that a loyalist is not with Bashar al-Assad. A loyalist is with Syria. What they're trying to tell you that this revolution is against Bashar al-Assad, they're lying to you. Even their website, the main website they ever had, they established from day one, it says the revolution against Bashar al-Assad. It's a lie. Because if that's the case, the majority of Syrians are with Bashar al-Assad. So their revolution should fall by default. The fact is, they want a regime change. They want to go from one bloc to another bloc. And what's happening in Syria, against all beliefs, is not a civil war. I need to emphasize this one more fact. What is happening, yes, internal. It looks like it's an internal struggle, but if it was a civil war, all 100% of people would be involved. 95% of the Syrians are not involved in this war. And Mother Agnes will come and tell you these civilians, what they're going through. But what we're saying is, it's a conflict, yes, between some Syrians as instruments, but the majority are not Syrians. These foreign jihadists who are coming to Syria themselves also are instruments. So what we need to know is who is fighting this war in Syria. It's not a war inside Syria, it's a war on Syria. Let's confirm it's a war on Syria. Okay? So our right to be loyalists to our country, yes, because if someone is fighting a war on us, I'm going to be with Bashar al-Assad. I'm going to be with the institutions, the government, the ministers, the Syrian army. All these are the regime. And of course, if they defend my country against the foreign jihadists, I'm going to be with them. So yes, I am a Syrian loyalist. Mother Agnes has been for 2.5 years. A lot of people just heard about Mother Agnes maybe in the last few months because of the chemical attack. But Mother Agnes has been for 2.5 years doing the kind of work that no Syrian or no one in the world would do or could do. She has risked her life almost every day, going into hot spots, trying to do a humanitarian cause. She is not a pro, she's not con, she has nothing to do with politics. Okay, even though we wish her to be on our side. But of course she's loyal to Syria as well, even though she's not Syrian, and she'll tell you that as well. But she has been working on the humanitarian needs of the Syrian people. She has been working with the displaced, with the refugees, with people who have been stuck, trying to evacuate. And she just did, before arriving to the United States, evacuate 7,000 civilians who were stuck in a very difficult area. She went inside on her own and was able to negotiate the evacuation of these Syrian people. That's what she should be known for, and that's what we commend her for. Mother Agnes, yes, has critiqued that video, and she'll tell you the story about it, because she got a phone call from some parents in northern Latakia. A month before this chemical attack, there was a mass execution in northern Latakia, in the province just south of Turkey, by thousands of jihadists. Thousands of jihadists who entered small villages that maybe 150, 200 people in it. And Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International reported facts. Hundreds of men, all adult men, were executed, and all women and children were taken hostages. And they have the names of them, and they're still missing. Some of these parents, alleging, when they called Mother Agnes, alleging that they saw their own children and this chemical, supposedly chemical attack with them. So she, as a humanitarian, went to see those children that they said that they were their kids, and she found some flaws in that video. And that's when, the international community wanted to hear from her, and she submitted her finding to the Geneva Convention. And let those findings be, let the fact be known. If the Syrian government who used this chemical attack, we want them punished. We don't want no deals. We want them punished. But if it's the terrorists who did this attack, we want them also punished. We don't want to cover the story. We don't want to move on and forget about it. No. We want to know the fate of these children that's still missing. And if these were children are in the videos, we want to know the truth. So we want to know the fate of these children. We want also to have the people responsible for supporting these groups, for this mass execution, to be held responsible, including the United States of America. 3 words. Mother Agnes-Mariam is courage under fire. Please welcome Mother Agnes.
Dear friends, I am very happy to be with you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It is my first visit to United States. And since the very day I put my feet on the US ground, I have been threatened with death. Every day I am threatened with death. You have some people here around, they think that they are the oracles, and that what they say is the truth and the unique reference for the civilian society and even for the religious leaders. In reality, they are repeating every day ad nauseam the same discourse, and they want everybody to talk like them, to think like them, and to promote what they are promoting. One color, one thought, one discourse. We are in an oppressive system that is against human rights, rights for expression, and for diversity. I am proposing here a third way. In the Syrian conflict, there must be a third way. We are not a party against another party. We are with the Syrian people, despite their political or religious affiliation. Our humanitarian efforts are impartial. I am with Syrians and with all Syrians. And I have stated, even though I am against fundamentalism and I am against discrimination on a religious basis, and I am against religious apartheid, I will consider any Jabhat al-Nusra fighter as my brother if he is Syrian, because I want to make dialogue with him. I want to understand his point of view, hoping that I can convince him to shift from a violent mean of opposition to a non-violent mean of opposition. I have stated also that all foreigners that are fighting in Syria with one party or another, I will not consider them for the moment as brothers until they go out, they go back to their country, and they leave the Syrian people alone. My dear friends, I am a witness. The Syrian conflict has been heavily covered by mainstream media. I will not repeat what you have been hearing for almost 3 years. It is enough, I think, that 500 mainstream media will present to you one side of the story. I don't say that I am against the whole story, but of course I have to tell you that many things in these stories are fake and have been mounted as the story of the massive mass destruction weapon in Iraq. Nevertheless, I let an international commission of inquiry to come in the future and to define who has done what in the Syrian conflict since the beginning. My position here is to highlight my own experience and to give you a point of view that is from the other side of the story, and to open with you the door to a breakthrough inside the Syrian conflict. I live in Syria since 1993. more than 20 years. I fell in love for this monastery. It was in ruin, and with my community we have restored it, and today it is among the biggest and maybe the nicest monasteries in Syria. Our community is 8 nationalities. All of them, they decided, 20 persons, to remain in Syria as a sign of solidarity with the Syrian people. In our region, 90 kilometers north to Damascus, we have the Free Syrian Army that is in control, and in our backyard, we have Jabhat al-Nusra, fighters from many countries that are infiltrated through Lebanon. Lebanon is 30 kilometers far from us. In the beginning of the protest, I was always to help young people that were detained. Here I am showing the signature of the mothers of those young people ask for their liberation in Qara. It is in the hall of our monastery. Very quickly, despite all the false reports, we have faced terrible violence in Syria before any other thing. Here we have a man in Nabak, 30 kilometers from us. Rebels entered in the city who was refusing to lodge protests. They went to the 3rd floor and they took him. He was eating with his family, put him on the window and recorded in a video. This is the fate of those who will not collaborate with the revolution. And they let him fall down. The problem is that it was the false man, but nevertheless he died. The Syrian conflict has spread all over Syria, but mainly coming from the regions that are limitrof to the borders. Because, as you have heard, the Syrian conflict is a proxy war. You are familiar with proxy wars. In Latin America, you have had many proxy wars, for example, in Nicaragua or in Guatemala. And in Iraq, you have had a proxy war. In Libya, you have had a proxy war. And today in Lebanon, you have had a mighty proxy war. And today in Syria, we have a proxy war. What does it mean, proxy war? Is to destabilize and to dismantle a state, not with our own army, for example, the US Army or the NATO, but through a proxy army from a third part, an army that is hired through private company like Blackwater or with another title. Those companies, they are training the proxy army. You have mercenaries that are paid very heavily, sometimes $50,000 per month, and they are hired all over the world. Sometimes they come from jails. They are high incriminated criminals. They let them go out and they give them a ticket without return to Syria. And you have also Syrian people. They have been convinced that this is the way to change something in Syria. But the Syrian people are the less numerous. I have been a privileged witness of this ongoing violence that was completely silenced in the media, in the mainstream media. If this violence was perpetrated by the government, you will hear about it every day and every single hour. But my point of view is that why this violence I have experienced in Homs, namely in Homs, and I have heard that the same violence was perpetrated all over Syria very early in the history of the revolution. If nobody highlighted about this ongoing violence, it means that there was a compromise. So the 5th of December, I went disguised to Homs to see what was going. This is my percourse from Bustani Diwan until the National Hospital, passing by Ozon, Wadi Sayeh, and Masoumi Boulevard. I will not take off your time to show you, but since 9 o'clock morning, after passing a whole night where it was a battle, during the whole night, and nobody was talking about this battle, in the morning, all the civilians we have seen in Homs were witnessing about atrocities that armed gangs were giving to the civilian population. The school was empty because of fear. The professors, they told us that one of the professor was abducted this very day. Here they talk that armed gangs entered in their homes and they had to flee and they perpetrated atrocities, and that the day before 9 Alawite were beheaded very near. So and they said Wadi Sayeh, the Valley of Pilgrim, is no more called Valley of Pilgrim, but the Valley of the Corpses, because every day someone is slaughtered there. So we decided, to go and see what was going on. And this woman is saying how there is a requisition of civilian houses for the purpose of attacks against army and security forces. So we are going. You see how I am disguised. And we arrive to a puddle of blood. Here, one day before, 9 Alawite were beheaded. I saw this blood and I prayed before this blood. After this, we continued and we saw very big school completely closed, and they gave us a report from the electricity of Syria saying the employees that armed gangs entered in the school and they obliged to close it, and they abducted professors from this school. We are the 5th of December 2011, where everybody was only referring to peaceful protest from one side, the white side, and from the other side, the black side, the repression of a ferocious regime. We continue. We wanted to go to the National Hospital, and in our path, we see a car that have been exploded and a corpse, a dead man laying beneath the door of his store. And what was surprising, that we saw on the spot the so-called amateur reporter of Al Jazeera, because instead of helping, those people were benefiting from the occasion to make a video amateur and send it to Al Jazeera, and we heard them saying, these are the deeds of the black battalions of Bashar al-Assad. But we knew afterwards that the rebels, or the so-called LCC, killed this poor man and cut him in pieces and blown up his car because he decided not to obey to the strike of honor that was ordained by the local coordination committees. You see how they are doing their job. We had it on the spot. It's a big evidence. This is his car. And they are sending videos with money. We continued. We arrived to the National Hospital. This day I have seen with my own eyes 100 corpses of civilians killed without knowing why. Out of any conflict, out of any repression, only because there was a plan to paralyze the civilian society and to create the good ground for a proxy war. And here is my man, the first atrocity, barbaric atrocity I have seen. I am praying until today for him because he refused to open his door. And this young lady came to tell us that her friends were abducted and killed in a bus. And she said, why, if I go out, they will kill me? So it was, an evidence. And here we go to see the morgue. And they have put all this cooler because they could not achieve. They have 3 more completely full. And look, the corpses, they are even laying on the ground. And people suffering. He comes to bring his brother. He was killed. He don't know why. He doesn't know why. And this woman, his brother-in-law, etc. So this was not the end, but the beginning of a passion. I saw with my own eyes that there were 2 levels in the story. One level that the mainstream media were highlighting in a propaganda-like manner, and another level, the level of the reality. And I said to myself, I will highlight as long as nobody highlights this side of the story. I will continue to highlight this side of the story. That's why today I am hated by the so-called Syrian American Council, a group of extremists, a group of confessionalists, a group that are hijacking the public opinion here in the States and precisely in California. And they do not say to the Americans whom they are giving them money for the so-called revolution that they are fueling the most terrible mercenaries coming from Al-Qaeda to spread more and more a lawless state and a complete broken society. I would like to show you the fate of the civilians in Syria. Why today do we have 7 million Syrians that are displaced? Because the method is to infiltrate the civilian residential areas and to transform those areas into a battleground. That's what happened in Hamidiyeh. And today I was in a parish and many people from Homs came to tell me, we are here because we were put outside our homes by those who came to liberate Hamidiyeh and Bustan ad-Diwan. When they liberate Hamidiyeh and Bustan ad-Diwan, they liberate those areas from their inhabitants. We had in single week 130,000 of civilians that flee. And of course, those people, they take whatever kind of transportation. Sometimes they walk, and they became refugees. The Armenians in Ras Al Ain and the Syriac in Ras Al Ain told me, Our forefather came in a caravan fleeing the Turks, and they settled in some places in Al Jazeera or in Aleppo. And now we, their children, we take the same path to flee out from hordes and death squads. And we have to help them. They become beggars. While in Syria, I have never had one soul poor people. Everybody was self-comfortable. Look, the Syrian people. Of course, the Armenian, they remember the fate. And until today, how many people in the world, they recognize the Armenian genocide? How many people recognize the Syriac and the Assyrian genocide? Nobody. Very little. They are scattered all over Syria, from one place to another. And in Jaramana, every day you have the bomb, the car blast. Did you hear ever a denial of those atrocities? Did you hear that those atrocities were happening in Syria? Why not? Why always one side of the story? We repeat it as a brainwash. But the reality of the fate of the majority of the Syrian population, nobody talks about it. The destruction of human beings and the destruction of their heritage. Mosques and churches and synagogues and bishoprics and parishes. Everything has been destroyed. Everything has been destroyed. And of course, the infrastructure of Syria. Let us think about the factories. More than 3,000 factories giving work to more than 1.5 million of workers have been destroyed or dismantled and sold very cheaply to Turkey. Only 1,500 in Aleppo, the capital, industrial capital of Syria. What is this? Why you don't highlight this? Why should I be the unique to highlight this? Tell me. You remember Stalingrad? You remember Dresden? The Mughal did not do what those people have done with Aleppo. And let them don't say that it is the plane of Bashar al-Assad. It is their infiltration, because Aleppo was living in peace before. Even though I will not take any position, but I have to say the reality. The day when they begin the Battle of Aleppo, I phoned to the Bishop of Aleppo. I told him, Monsignor, what is happening? He said, my daughter, it is an invasion. It was an invasion. And they were not even Syrian. And nobody in the mainstream media said what was happening really. And today, they bear the responsibility of the destruction of this beautiful city, World Heritage City. Only to have retaliation on Armenian jewelers, they stole 5 tons of gold in the souks of Aleppo. The souk, they burned them. They were too beautiful because they are jealous. Despite all this, beside all this, we have another plague in Syria we have to address. It is the fundamentalism. I am not Islamophobe. I am fundamentalist phobe. I am not against any spirituality, but I am against the hijacking of the religion for terrorist purpose. I am against the discrimination in the name of Allah. The Islamic extremist, dear, is under the supervision of United States, because United States created Taliban and Al-Qaeda to topple USSR in Afghanistan. And today they are recycling Al-Qaeda in many places, and especially in Syria. You have clerics, they fuel the extremism with their discourse. Today, anti-Semit is very bad, and everybody prohibit anti-Semit. Everybody prohibit apartheid. Why the fundamentalism is not prohibited? Why those satellite television continue to spread a very bad discourse and nobody is saying anything? Why in the capitals and in the cities in the Western world, I have seen in Australia some kind of Afghanistan, and here in Los Angeles you have another kind of Afghanistan. You cannot go there because there is an Islamic extremist. What do you think? Do you think that you will have peace with this Islamic extremism? It's not only a matter of thought. Those people immediately they kill. I have been threatened 3 times since my arrival to United States. They are financed by Gulf countries, supported by France, England, and Turkey, with Arab League compromise and Israel blessing, but not the Jews. The Jews are very fearful of these extremists because they know after a while they will pay the price. You have this sheikh, and you have this one, and you have the battalions of Allah. The Economist 1 year ago said that 2,000 battalions were working, different, each one more or less independent, working in Syria, with more than 150,000 mercenaries. Those mercenaries that are from Al-Qaeda, considered as a terrorist group, they are welcome and praised in the Western media and also on Al Jazeera. Mahdi al-Harati is Al-Qaeda Irish member. He has a battalion of 6,000 mercenaries, Libyan mercenaries in Syria. I have met some people abducted by them. They said they have no heart. And the title of the Syrian revolution, the democracy and the freedom for which United States are paying more than $300 million per year. Here we have, as the Daily Mail is referring, the same rebel saying, we are seeking not freedom, but the Islamic Caliphate. The Islamic Caliphate is not the Umayyad Caliphate, is not the Abbasid Caliphate, it's not even the Ottoman Caliphate. It's a caliphate that is new and is based on terror. And here this Sheikh Abdus Salam Harba in Al-Qusair, he says, if you drink alcohol, we will behead you on the Suez. And beheadings are becoming something very ordinary in Syria. I have videos I cannot see. You will not be able to see them. The fate of the Syrian civilian population under this revolution. And in Aleppo, the city of culture, the city of pluralism, the city that is like Antioch, nearby the cradle of Christianism, the Committee for the Obligation of Goodness and Prohibition of Evil. You know, in the so-called liberated areas, you cannot sell or buy cigarettes, the girl cannot go out without a hijab, and she has to have a mahram, and all kind of things worse than Saudi Arabia. They want to impose this ideology on the Syrian people. And the statistics of the Syrian sinister are going up and up. Here, since 1 year, you can look what are the statistics. In less than 1 year, we have 10 times more. So where are we going? What those people would like? Why are they bothered with one voice that is saying something different of what they do and they say all over those years? We have decided, dear friends, as the unique way to bypass the ongoing atrocities, reconciliation through forgiveness. We have to address the challenges I showed you. It's important. It's important to look at the reality. But the most important is to bypass this reality with hope and with action and with commitment. And our commitment is to support the reconciliation in Syria. That's why we have founded the International Support Team for Musalaha, Reconciliation in Syria. Our symbol is a man called Abu Fayyad. Abu Fayyad is a Sunni fellow in Homs. He is employee in the governorate, and once we were negotiating as a reconciliation committee a non-violent settlement between belligerents in a suburb. But there were divergences, and each one was saying, no, I don't want, I will not accept you. And so at the end, after a few hours, Abu Fayyad, this man, he raised and he said, can I talk? He said, I will give you my story. I had a son called Fayyad, 20 years old, my unique son. I have no other children. He was universitarian, and he was abducted. He disappeared for few months. We could not have any sign if he was living or dead. And one day, we received a phone call. Would you like to have Fayyad? I said, of course, and I will give whatever you need. And we were full of hope, Abu Fayyad said. And they said, tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And Abu Fayyad brought sweets and flowers and his neighbors and parents, and they were waiting with a lot of hope. And a car came, and they heard a shock. They opened the door, and now you will see something very graphic. And Fayyad, the unique son of Abu Fayyad, was in a plastic bag, tortured and cut in pieces. And Abu Fayyad said, this picture is from him. And Abu Fayyad said, look what they have done with my beautiful son. Without any reason, because I am a peaceful man. And he said, I forgive. Would you forgive one to another for the sake of Syria? You see, this is our path. Don't say anymore, this one has done this, the regime has done this. Why are you always focusing on hatred? Why? The whole world has been reporting what you are saying. And we are not sure that you are saying the truth. Sometimes there is something true in what you say, but many times you are lying. I know that you are lying. You have been mounting many things in the mainstream media just to convince the world that it is time to intervene in Syria and topple the government for your own interest. And if your interest was the sake of Syria, maybe we could have been working with you. But your interest is not the sake of Syria. Because today, you say you have liberated 70% of the Syrian soil. Give me 1 square meter where there is democracy, human rights, and freedom, and I will convert. Stop fueling hatred. Stop fueling violence. And thanks to the Lord, we are supported by prominent personalities like Father Blaise here, but also Mrs. Myred Maguire, a Peace Nobel Prize laureate. She invited me to Belfast, and we made the plans, and she is my mentor, and we work together. We have been invited many times to Geneva, and we work with the Commission of Inquiry and with the High Commissioner for Human Rights. We try to give them the other story, the other side of the story, to have balance, so that the reality in Syria is really understood. And we work with the reconciliation committees in Syria. They are all over the Syrian soil. Those people, they decided to make an oath to never take arm one against the other. And they spread all over Syria, and they go all over Syria, and they have volunteers, thousands of volunteers, and they cross borders, and they tear down walls, and they build bridges. If someone is abducted, he will come to the reconciliation committee. If someone is in jail, they will come to the reconciliation committee. If someone is starving because of the conflict, they will come to the reconciliation committee. We work even with the fighters from both sides. We go to all sides to tell them, take it easy. Syrian, your fate is to live together. I even went with the Jews. And I have been criticized. They said those Jews in France, the Jewish-Israel Alliance in France, they invited me. They said those are anti-Semite. How a Jew can be an anti-Semite? You see. But the Jews are very much concerned with the fundamentalism. Because tomorrow, neither the moderate Muslims, neither the Druze, neither the Alawite, or the Christian, or the Ismailite, or the atheist, nobody will be spared by those hordes. And with the media, I have been talking to many media, even with Barbara Walters. On Europe 1, with Jean-Pierre El-Kabbash. And every time those people, they say, she is an agent. Today, in Syria for All, I am an agent of Al-Mossad. A turning point was the visit of Peace and Reconciliation international visit to Syria, Myred Maguire with 16 peace activists. Those people, they came from all over the world, and one folk came from San Francisco. They have seen with their own eyes what is happening in Syria. They went to Lebanon, and they came to Syria with ministers, but also with opposition fighters, with loyalist tribes, with opponent neighborhoods. We went everywhere. And we were asked to negotiate a settlement in Al-War, in Homs. So we weep with those who weep. We suffer with those who suffer. we pray. And we have personalities that support reconciliation. First of all, our patriarch. He has adopted the reconciliation as the third way or the unique path for salvation for Syria. The Maronite patriarch, the leaders, Palestinian and Tunisian and Egyptian and Sudan, and here even you have the prime minister, what's his name? لا هديك تبع الحريري. In Bucharest with the Mufti, with Sharon Stone, with the Dalai Lama. It means that everywhere, when you talk about reconciliation, people are happy and they want to help. There is hope. And now I will talk about Muaddamiyya very quickly. Muaddamiyya is a neighborhood rebel stronghold that suffered a lot from the security forces. I have to say it. And that's why the young people there, they get armed. And slowly by slowly, it became a kind of ghetto, and the army besieged this neighborhood. More than 150,000 people, they fled away, and the families of the rebels remained with some others inside. And they were starving. And I knew that they were starving. I made all the possible to make enter food inside, but it was difficult, but the family said they prefer to be evacuated. And we obtained green light, and we entered first to make negotiation with the rebels. We entered with Jubhat al-Nusra, and we made talks, and then they opened for us a safe way. Here we are with the rebels. And we could evacuate 7,000 women, children, and the last day, 550 fighters surrendered to the army, and they were well treated, and they are not in jail, but in a phase of rehabilitation. What we say, many achievements of reconciliation open the door for a new approach of the Syrian conflict outside of any alignment, saying the truth, balancing the truth, but heading toward a apolitical, a-religious approach that is reconciliation between the Syrian people. And we gave as title, the Syrian person over all consideration. We hope that my expose will call your attention. Thank you very much.
I do want to thank the place for allowing us to be here today. This was on very short notice. They're asking us that we have only about 20 minutes. So we do appreciate them giving us this, again, space on very short notice. If you have questions, we're going to go ahead, just raise your hand, and we'll take it by hand. We don't need to fill out the
sorry, can I add something? He said it's okay, we can go sit outside.
We don't want to sit outside.
That's okay.
I don't want to sit outside.
Could
But I think she spoke plenty. If anybody has a question that has not been, let's not repeat the questions as well. Ara?
okay, could you tell us a little bit about the chemical bomb attacks and the details of what really happened that day, as far as you know?
Okay, very quickly, there have been a big massacre in the mountain of Latakiye. 11 villages were completely massacred by Jubhat al-Nusra. And the women and children that survived were abducted. after this was the 4th of August. The 21st of August was the chemical attacks. And after 1 week, I received telephone call from those families. We sent someone, a team, to heal them and stay with them, etc. So we were in contact. They told us that they recognized the families, their own children in some victims of Al Ghouta. So I began to look at the videos to track those children. And tracking the children, I discovered many weird things. So I made a study, and I was invited to Geneva for the General Assembly of a Human Rights Council, and I gave my study, 50 pages, to all the delegation. After a while, Mr. Lavrov cited me twice on an international level, and I was heavily interviewed. What I say, I don't enter in the expertise of this attack. I don't say anything. It was an attack, it was not an attack, I don't say. I do not incriminate anybody. All what I conclude is that some of the video authenticated by the US intelligence community to present them as evidences of the attacks to the Congress are fake. And precisely video number 1, video number 6, video number 11, and video number 13. And I am 100% sure that those videos are mounted and they are fake. Thank you.
When and how do you think this thing is going to end?
Good question. You have two possibilities. Either the Syrian people, the Free Syrian Army, and the Syrian Army, they go together to put outside the foreigners and close the border and impose a ceasefire. Or if the Syrian people will not come together, we will have, like in Lebanon, for 10, 15, 20, and 25 years.
Do you think it would be a good idea to send in the United Nations peacekeeper force?
I think that the international community, first of all, the United Nations, of course, has to protect the sovereignty of the Syrian country, of the Syrian state. And they have to stop demonizing the Syrian government. Even though the Syrian government is perpetrating I don't know what, the Syrian government is an elected Syrian government, and without this government we don't have a state. Third, the Syrian people must be free to elect whom they want and care about their affairs alone. Now, if the Syrian people, they ask someone to come and help them, they are free. I am not to take the choice instead of them.
My question, the fate of the kidnapped bishops, including about 30 Armenians that are being kept in Turkey, are there any news about their kidnapping? Are they alive?
We heard lately that Qatar is moving for the two bishops. Before we had news that they had moved for their abduction. In all cases, we are happy that they are alive, and we hope that the international community will do whatever is necessary for the liberation of the two bishops, of the two priests, and of all the abductees that are by thousands.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. What about Iraqi people? They kill too much innocent people because they are Christian for no reason.
In Iraq, we have had a surprise that after the death of the so-called tyrant Saddam Hussein and the entrance and the entry of the NATO or American army, we had the displacement of more than the 2/3 of the Christian of this country. So I don't understand why you come to protect Iraq from mass destruction and from a tyrant, and what we have today in Iraq is something worse than the tyrant. I don't understand. Like I don't understand the revolution in Syria. They say they want reform and they want freedom and they want democracy, and what they realize on the ground is exactly the contrary of any freedom, of any democracy, and of any human rights.
Is it true that you were contacted by the Emir of Qatar? And if so, what kind of conversation did you have?
When I made my unique press conference after the visit of a group of reporters we invited with the Catholic Information Center in Lebanon to visit Syria and tell us what was really happening, because it was schizophrenic. We made a press conference and we said what I was telling you, that instead of seeing from one part protester and from other part repression, we saw a third part that was attacking and aggressing the civilian population and the security forces. So it was like, you know, a big shock. And many mainstream media contacted me, and the chargé d'affaires of the Emir of Kuwait, of Qatar, he proposed his good services for my church and for my monastery and many good things if I remain, how you say, moderate. It was a very respectful bribe.
Sister Agnes, we were told by the State Department in Washington that the United States has spent hundreds of millions of dollars in humanitarian aid in Syria during the past, I don't know, year or year and a half, through United Nations means and also the Red Crescent. My question is, are the Syrian people aware? Are the Syrian people are getting this kind of an aid, and where is it reaching? How is it being distributed? What can you tell us about that?
To tell you the truth, now you have international organizations that are accredited toward the Syrian government, like the World Health Organization, like World Food Program, like Red Crescent, UNCHR, and others, Norwegian aid organization. I didn't hear about any US aid inside the loyalist parties. What I know is that the United States is helping the rebel part, and they are helping to implement a kind of local administration. But I have been there. I have been in the so-called liberated areas in North Idlib, in North Aleppo. I didn't see any kind of administration there. You have death squads, you have battalions, very heteroclite, and people are really starving, and it is the Syrian government who is fueling them with electricity, with water, with salaries, with medical aid, and with anything else. I think that there is somewhere in the circuit a kind of laundry of these ads, and because we see a lot of lethal material, American lethal material, like Concords, etc., that the rebels, they have them. It means that this money is transformed into weapons, and the weapons are into the hands of very radical parties, very radical parties.
Go ahead, Reza.
Thank you very much. When you mentioned Stalingrad and Düsseldorf in Germany, we have thousands, we have Hanoi, we have East LA, South Central LA. No matter where you go, this misery is being pushed by the people. I would like to ask you, there are a group of Iranians sold out Mujahideen. U.S. brought them in Las Vegas, training them, sending back there with others. 700 of them are these reactionary groups are fighting against the people of Syria. Don't you think that instead of United Nations being sold out, during the war in Spain, volunteers from all over the world, they went to Spain to defeat the Franco. Don't you think we should call for volunteers from all the world to go and defend the Syrian people?
Look, yes, I have seen the Mujahideen also in Geneva. They gave them a big land, and every day, it's a political interest, okay? What we are calling is a white army, a reconciliation army, a prayer army. Many people will come to Syria to pray, and many people will come to Syria to help as a reconciliation team. So if you want, you are welcome. I am against violence mean.
Thank you.
Do you think that the church and the religious institutions have been shy and short in informing public about what you were saying today to us?
Yes, it is true. We have to accept that religion has taken the place of spirituality. You know, religion, it's something like administration. Each one will seek the interest of its own administration, but it will forget justice and equity and truth. So we hope that slowly by slowly, goodwill people will open their eyes, will open their heart toward this cause that is the cause of the Good Samaritan. It's the cause of humanity. What do we want? What do we want? Do you want us to do when we have a human being that is killed? We cannot just go and pray. We have to help him.
I just want to thank you, Mother Agnes, on your mission of peace and courage. 2 days ago, I was at an event where they were publishing a book about the witnesses from the witnesses of the ravishing of Armenia. And what we tell today has a very uncanny resemblance to what those witnesses were telling about what was going on 100 years ago. And today what's going on is the ravishing of Syria and the systematic destruction of Syria. So I hope everybody can hear you, and soon reconciliation will come to Syria and the peace will follow. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I really hope that Armenian people, because you are experienced in the same fate, you have a lot of lobbying, you have a lot of network, that you will make a network to help the Syrian people not to have this fate and to succeed in getting rid of this foreign intervention.
Okay, well, time is up. One more question and then one more. Last 2 questions. And then, no, I'm happy to do an announcement. I'm just finishing the questions.
Mother Agnes, do you have plans or are your hosts are organizing meetings with spiritual leadership, religious spiritual leadership in America of different faiths, so that they can be aware of the truth as you described, and that they can exert adequate pressure on our political.
To tell you the truth, there have been so much pressure on Vatican that Vatican is willing that I will shut up. My patriarch is sustaining me, but today I will not be able to see any spiritual high-ranked leader. In San Francisco, we had very beautiful ceremony with all the local spiritual leaders, and we had very beautiful prayer. I am willing to, maybe I will be received by the Archbishop of Canterbury, I don't know, but in the Catholic point of view, I will not be able to see many people until I will have to visit the Pope, but not now, after.
Thank you so much. I admire your
persistence, and your peaceful heart. You're a great humanitarian. You're spiritual. You're everything. Thank you so much. Okay, so she's having the North American tour. There is a terrible resistance against the SAC, the opposition, who are backed, by the U.S., have been sabotaging most of our events. So we had an event, we planned an event at the Armenian church. They got scared, they canceled. I went through hell for 2 days to find a place. I'm working, trying to find a place. This place they offered us, but we have to pay some money, and everybody needs to make a donation. I would really appreciate it. Or else we were not going to have any event with Mother Agnes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.